Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important hour of your week. I'm Michael, the Opportunity Ambassador and MC for today's show. And today's show title is Finding Loopholes in the New Normal. We're going in. With me today is my favorite two co-hosts, Agnieszka, our illuminator.
That's right. I changed it. I figured I wasn't just one kind of an illuminator. I'm a total illuminator.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love, everyone. And all.
So we're talking about finding loopholes today. And does anybody want to describe this, or do you want me to start off?
I did look up the definition of loophole. Let me
Ooh,
jump in
cool.
like nonchalantly.
I was going to say, I think Dennis should do a monologue, and then he was right on it. So
No, I thought I was going to surprise you. So loophole, so obviously like it's the word loop and the word hole. And a hole is a slit opening in a wall. Surprise. And originally it comes from the kind of holes that they had in walls of castles, for example, that that protected the one who was shooting or firing arrows from projectiles from the outside while shooting, or for light ventilation as well. So it is it has a medieval root, and from continental Germanic source such as Middle Dutch lupen, which means to watch or to peer, and so
like lupa, the telescope.
yeah, and it
The
was
word for
also
telescope.
and it also refers to an outlet that could give you the means to escape from somewhere. So that's like an interesting twist on it. So we're talking about loopholes to escape the new normal. And then should we define new normal as well? Well, who doesn't know the new normal by now?
I'm like,
They're definitely putting it up.
I don't know, dude. I don't know. Maybe. Let's do it. Let's describe what new normal is.
Well,
New normal is the thing we do when we don't obey.
Well, cutting through it right from the top is the new normal really so much different from the old normal? Or is it just a different nuance? Is it like just a different shade of the same
Is it
illusion,
still the
Maya that was there
sunset, but
before?
the different, yeah.
Yeah, it's still the homogenization of everything into one. And to some degree, that in itself is not good.
But what happened to individuality?
So isn't there the one in the all as well, and the all in the one? And the new normal and the old normal, isn't it just different words, different shades of a reality that really is just an illusion?
An illusion.
At the source.
Yeah,
Yes.
an illusion.
So it's a colorful new shade of the illusion that we have been living in. So how do we deal with it, with a new shade, with the new nuances of the perceived reality we experience?
I have a solution. We should go
Oh
back.
no, we're not at solutions yet. We're at a problem. You have to talk about the problem now.
Okay, well, I'll wait 10 minutes, then I'll say.
15.
Well, can you talk about the problem first and then the solution?
I think
What is the problem that the solution is solving?
We should put this episode as an advertisement for how silly we become.
Well, some of the problems that I perceived is, down to earth. Okay, if you have a business, you can't open a business.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's a shade of it as well. Somebody, some entity, supposedly telling you how you have to dress yourself, where and when you can or cannot send your children to school, or if you have to. The fact that you have to, actually, on this side of the world. What else? Whether you're allowed to, where you're allowed to go or not.
Yeah. But all these rights you're talking about, like right to dress how you want, or or go where you want or whatever. When you start looking at like when it was limited and stuff, it always goes to some kind of a shady past. I know that's probably because I've been working with Howard Lichtman, which is Etienne de Boiti squared, Boazi squared. I think that's how you say it. And he puts a lot of like these dots. He connects the dots in such a good way sometimes, where showing you how everything is connected. You know, you think that you're fighting this enemy over here or opposing this thing over here, but in reality it's connected to all this spider web to something that happened 300 years ago.
Yeah, that's
And
why it's
that's
good
why
to
it's not
look.
new.
That's great. When we then look at, what we perceive, like on the surface, the kind of problems and the things that change, and what we cannot do or what we supposedly have to do right now, and then we go a little deeper and we look what actually the source is of those outcomes that we perceive now. Eh?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that also we need to keep in mind is that in a lot of ways it is an illusion where people are being told, or at least there's the innuendo that they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't cross the border, they can't fly on an airplane, they can't, go to the grocery store without doing certain
But
things.
they're just
In
saying it.
reality, it is still your choice, and yet most people are thinking that it's not your choice or it's not
So
their choice.
it's so mind-blowing living in Acapulco and seeing all these people arrive every week from all these different places, England, Australia, Canada, US. Every single week there are new people, yet we're not supposed to have new people. How does that work? How did they leave? You know, what did they have to get through? The British lady said no questions were asked, jokes were said, but most people just believe it out of hand. They don't check if that's the reality.
So that's a hijack of the mind, isn't it? That actually goes into the source. That this stuff is mind. It's through your mind, and it's all a construct of the mind, really, which goes back to the old normal, the new normal. Is that really, if that is all just illusion, if that's just a construct of the mind, so then what we're experiencing is just a different angle and a different quality, if you can even use that word, of the construct that we're perceiving in the mind. And then is it, who is in control of the mind, who runs the mind, who runs the show? Are we in charge of that? Are others in charge of it? Are there others anyway? And what is the lesson behind it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways it reflects this kind of passivity and reactivity that most people are conditioned to just expect, that they don't know exactly what to do until something happens, and then they react to it rather than just doing what they want and doing what they believe is the right thing to do.
And there's
And
you mentioned on Monday the ignorance as well, right? So ignorance is part of that. So if you ignore the fact, or if you haven't even looked for what really is, then you're bound to fall for the illusion that is there. And then your mind, your perception is going to be uh, according to what others who are capable of hijacking your mind, of selling you their illusion, and who supposedly are benefiting from that sale. You're bound to fall for that, and that in itself is a lesson, right? Which all comes back to yourself again. It's like, oh, you can complain, you can point fingers all day, the system and the this and the that, but in the end, it takes two. It takes one who's hijacking, who's taking away, and it takes the other one who is in his naivety giving it away, or not able to protect also, and to secure and to own his mind.
yeah, there was, if you look back at the beginnings of the Soviet Union, for the first probably 5 or 6 years of the Soviet Union, there wasn't really that like border control where people couldn't escape. There were probably hundreds of thousands of people being killed each month in the Soviet Union, but for the most part, people could leave. And I think of like the religious leaders that were in the Soviet Union that essentially were just trying to placate the governing people. And so they just kind of let them keep taking stuff away from them with the
My
idea
grandma
that
left.
there was,
My grandma, I don't remember exactly when she left, but she was in Ukraine and then she saw bad stuff coming and she literally walked. She tried to
yeah,
get her grandma to come with her, but her grandma was like, I'm not leaving my property. And she's like, I'm leaving. And then she took like a little parcel with her and she walked. 17-year-old girl.
wow. Yeah, well, I think that's, you know, I mean, that's this, I think that's kind of the situation that's playing out now is that, you know, at the beginning, people are just kind of led to believe that there's these barriers and borders and you know, obstructions to them doing the things that they think are more correct than what is. But then as time goes on, people just accept that as reality, and then laws and border gates and fences go up, and pretty soon it is the reality. And people need to figure that out quicker this time than they did last time.
Yeah, they're
It's
not questioning
amazing.
it, right?
It's amazing how many Americans this year say, now we know what the wall was for. You know, the Mexico wall. Because at the beginning that made no sense, but now it's like, oh, it's not for keeping people out, you know?
So I still think there's a lot of people, and of course they do have that, you know, they still have that continued narrative where people are coming in the border, people are breaking in the, you know.
Some people are. I know a family who just moved to Canada. Some people are.
Well, I think, you know, if you look at what's going on in Honduras, a lot of the NGOs are taking those people and informing those people to move, you know, to go to Mexico. And then if you look at what's happening at the border, people that are from Mexico that cross the border into the United States and they get caught are being told to go back to, you know, basically being forced to go back to Mexico. But if you're from Guatemala or any other place on the planet, oh no, we'll just give you a ticket. You know, we'll fill it out, and then you got to come back in 30 days. But you're left in the United States.
Well, because you can't extradite them. See, that's a legal issue. Because extradition when you're at the border is super easy, but extradition when you're like kilometers away, you cannot extradite somebody to a foreign country. You have to extradite them into their own country.
Well, but if they cross the border from Mexico into the United States, why wouldn't
It doesn't
just
matter.
come back over to the other side?
Mexico is not the owner of those. Mexico is not the person who's in charge of the parent of those children.
Well, again, it's a created situation that's being and the people are being rewarded for participating, and so it's going to be perpetuated. But for the masses within the United States, they see the border as something that's being penetrated, and in reality, it more than likely will be something that's going to be holding them in at some point.
Yeah, well, the whole border issue is something, you know, seeing it from the other way around, looking at places like Israel right now, where there's, you know, from what I can perceive and see, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of hard to live there right now. And there's the whole medical procedure, the forced medical procedure being in place or having been introduced over the last few weeks there. And talking about loopholes, it's like, oh wow, Agnieszka, you mentioned your grandma who walked and who caught the loophole, you know, of maybe an open border that she still was able to get through in order to get out. So that's a whole different thing, you know. Some people trying to get in, other people trying to get out, and just watching at how things, you know, how certain loopholes are closing. Is it a real thing, you know, or is it just in our mind? Is it just perceived? It definitely seems as if it is not as easy to move around and to cross borders or to enter certain countries or places as it used to be just 2 years ago. And on family members now, just have two who crossed from Southern Europe coming up, and it went well, but it was questionable. Like, what will they make it? What are going to be the restrictions? Do you have to have
Consequences.
your tests there at the border? Not what's going to be. So it went well. That's good, but yeah, things are definitely questionable right now, and you don't know like what you're going to encounter, because you have one supposed reality being portrayed through the official mainstream media. Then you might have a few different views here and there, like in the alternative corners, but then you don't really know until you go out there and you're at the border and you talk to the guy or not and see
Yeah.
what happens there.
Absolutely, yeah. So what do we think is the source of this problem? I mean, is it that they want to constrain people to their particular farms, and these are just cattle that they're trying to get to a new level of domestication, or are they really trying to create the circumstance that they're solving the population problem right before our eyes, and nobody seems
What
to
if
wanna-
they're flushing out the subversives?
Flushing out there.
Subversives, like as people move from, some people are moving this way and some people are moving this way. So who is moving this way and who's moving that way?
What if it's an IQ test? So you see, there's this whole view where you can look at it and say, if they would force people, by like literally physically force people, like how slavery, how this stuff has been done for centuries or maybe for millennia before, then of course you have right away you have a strong
yearning
resistance.
for the old days.
You have a strong resistance against that. If somebody cracks a whip on your back, then it's like, whoa, how, I have to do something about that. But if it's not the cracking whip, but it is like, some TV series and the 9 to 5 job and, the new normal, the old normal, so to say, then people, feel rather comfy with it and actually get acquainted with that. And if it's done over generations and generations, then you get people into a place, and that has been quoted and that has been set out, where they actually long for that, and where they will start to fight you if you actually point that out and if you try to take them out of that, because they, for the most part, feel rather comfortable with it. So it's then a source of what's happening there. If you look at it holistically, on a physical level, it is be resting in that physical comfort and in the feeling of you're being taken care of, and there's insurance and there's this and that, and there's there's a structure, there's a system set up that will allow you to be okay. You're not perfect, but you're not down there. So it's like, okay, if I just do what I'm being told, then I'll be taken care of. And there's a little food and there's a little this and that, and as long as I nod my head and do what I'm told, I'll be physically okay. And then if you look at the emotional level, what is the source, from an emotional side? Is it like, on one side, I feel like I have to suppress my emotional being, and I cannot really express myself. But on the other side, if I'm just staying within the normal and I'm not too far out there, then, they leave me alone, and I'm going to be okay. And again, I have food, and I have, I'll be I'll be a piece in the puzzle. I'll be the small wheel in the big machine, and then they leave me alone. And on the mental thing, that's what we touched upon before. Is it the ignorance of really wanting to see what is going on, and the lack of wanting to express yourself fully, and of using your mental capacity as well. That is the source of it, I would say, to a degree, definitely. And then also, letting yourself being hijacked, and letting your mental potential, giving that away to somebody else, to a system that makes you think things that feel comfortable to you, and that you in a way want to believe, because otherwise it would be really hard, and it would be actually painful in a way to confront the actual reality of the nature of life that we have been living. So from that view, the current circumstances also force at least some of us to reevaluate the state of being right? The state of our mind, the state of our physicality, the state of our emotional being, and on the spiritual level, of course, it's a whole different perspective again. But what do you think about that, guys? How do you perceive the source of the situation we're in now?
Well, I do think that people are going to take advantage, but especially when there's money to be made, and especially when there's a great deal of debt that's been stacked up to the point that it's ridiculous. And they know the system is going to have to change because it's like they've borrowed so much money that it doesn't even make any sense that they could even possibly pay it back in anybody's lifetime or even a couple generations lifetime. So they've got to reset the system, and so to hide that, they have to come up with some kind of story. And I think in the past it's been world wars. Before that it was smaller wars, but now now that they're on a global scale, they've got to do it in a different way that basically gets everybody to look the other way as they move all the loot out the back door of the bank, I guess. And so that's a great incentive, for a lot of people. And so those people that are incentivized, if there is no consequences to that, why wouldn't they do it? And that's kind of the problem that we have, is we have a system that doesn't have consequences for the people that do the wrong thing.
Well, consequences.
That is truly what's going to happen, and especially if they've had success story after success story. Hey, guess what? I made $1 billion screwing these people over, and they never figured it out.
And that's still rooted in ignorance, right? Because if you think that there are no consequences for the actions that you take, just because the system or the whatever doesn't doesn't push those consequences upon you, then that in itself is ignorance. Because for every breath that you take, for every thought that you hold, for every action that you take, there are consequences by nature of the universe. So that is then again the ignorance of who you truly are, of how this place runs, and of what's really going on. And so there, the fall is basically programmed.
I think there are consequences, and the people that are the ruling class, they do suffer, and that's why they're creating, why they're manifesting a world that's full of suffering.
And why they're setting. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And that is why they're setting up this whole thing in a way that they don't actively force it, or at least they are not the ones who stand there with the whip in the hand, but they manipulate people so that we amongst ourselves are basically perpetuating the mechanisms that they lay out. But it's it is like is the one who is setting up the idea and the framework for what's happening, is he the one who will suffer the consequences, or is it the actual one who is doing the hands-on dirty work, if I may say that?
I think the person that will suffer the consequences is the one that allows the consequences to be hoisted upon him. I think the people who are freedom-minded will stand up and not allow things to happen, will take action. What do you think? Like my grandma, she walked. That's action. And she never saw Ukraine again, in her whole lifetime. She was never able to go back.
Yeah, but she lost her property, right?
Oh, absolutely. She would have lost more than her property had she stayed. Her grandma lost her life. They lost all of their property and everything that belonged to them. And I don't think any of her uncles or aunts survived to stay behind.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is that these guys are worried about resources and property and stuff like that. They can grab up all this property that either people abandon or people that are eliminated. they don't have a claim to that stuff anymore. So they get, that's the bonus. And this is something that's not just been going on, you know, for the last 10 years. This has been going on for 100 plus, you know, 150 years probably, you know, and
The whole property thing is such a weird concept, you know. How can you own the beach? How can you own the forest or the rocks? How can you own a cave or, you know, a mountain peak? You can't own any of that stuff. You can say on a piece of paper, this belongs to Susie Smith, but in reality, you can never own anything.
But to stay with the story of your grandmother there, you know, talking about the importance of identifying the loophole and of actually taking action in the right moment. So one thing is to see where the loopholes, and that was like a physical
Right.
loophole. That was like, oh, there's an opportunity to walk. You know, I can walk. I can get out of this, and then and a few people actually are seeing those, but then out of those few that see it, there's even less who actually take action, and that is, you know, that is of course part of the whole thing. You don't only have to see it, but you have to have the guts, and you have to have the confidence, you know, in the intuition, in perceiving what's going on. We talked about the intuition like a few weeks back.
well, that's kind of the thing is they're creating the momentum where if you just go along, oh, you're going to get a government check, just go along and everything's going to be fine. But just go along, take the vaccine and you can have your job back. Just go along and et cetera, et cetera. But
Not
once they
only, you
get
can
you
also
going
have
down
a,
that momentum, you can't, you know, it's a heck of a lot harder for people to take action and change and try and change when they've already started down the direction in the opposite direction. And so that's, you know, where you see a great deal of people and probably a majority of people, majority of the masses that are just going along. And to some degree, they may have alternative points of view, but they're either kind or they're fooled or they're whatever, but nevertheless, they're going along, and that really kind of creates the circumstance where the vast majority of people will not take action.
They're selling false loopholes, right? So it's like, oh, here, this is the loophole for you. Oh, take this. You know, all you have to do is just put on this something on your face, or you have to take this test, and oh, and then everything is gonna be back to you're gonna be free again. You're gonna be okay. And those are false loopholes, really. So the ability to distinguish and to identify, you know, what is your loophole, you know, what is your way out of this thing, and then again, you know, looking at it holistically, it's like, what is your way out physically, like your grandma did? Okay, I physically walk, I remove myself from the situation. What is there? Are there loopholes on an emotional level? Oh, let me, you know, just detach from this whole all this game. You know, it's ups and downs, and today is yeah, and tomorrow is like, oh no, and you know, this is there. So there's loopholes on all levels that we can identify, and if the situation doesn't allow for us to walk, you know, maybe there's something we can do on the mental level, on the spiritual level. That we can always do that, right? So it's never too late. It's never the
Yeah,
wrong moment to cut through.
that, that is the good news. There are a lot of different loopholes. There is no united front where everybody is just solidly like stormtroopers and they're standing at the border and you can't go across, and there's just no way everybody knows the rules and they're not, if you break the rules, everybody's going to see you. And no, it's not like that at all. There's a great deal of dissent. There's a great deal of humanity still left in anyone and everyone. And to a large degree, it's a matter of just finding out what are the pieces to the puzzle that haven't been filled in, that leave out that, give us that opportunity to step through and be the chink in the armor that really kind of unravels the whole thing.
And we really have
like
to
the
see the
lady with the
problem.
hair, like the lady with the hair salon.
Yeah, we really have to see the problem and see what's going on and analyze that in order then to look for the solution within the problem. And we you know, we have all heard about quite a few examples of creative solutions that people, you know, came up with, and you know, and actually
Like what? Tell us. Maybe we
you just
didn't
mentioned
all
one.
hear. Yeah, I mentioned the lady with the hair salon, but maybe these people don't know
Where
what
was
I'm
she
talking
from
about.
and what did she
Somewhere in
do?
the States.
Yeah, we never figured out exactly where she was from. I think it might have been Colorado, but you know, she turned her hair salon into a video production studio and film people and cut their hair. Yes, she was filming people.
And that's
So
what
then it was an essential business, and she was allowed to conduct her thing. But oh, it just so happens you got a haircut while you're getting filmed.
so that's the loophole right there. It's like a loophole in the jurisdiction in the lockdown measurements, right, that were put in place. I have there's an example here of a large perfume store of a chain in Germany, and it's not rebrand, but they re-registered the nature of their business, and by doing that, they became not a perfume store or chain, but they became a drugstore. And they're selling essential stuff because like drugstores here, that's like hygiene articles and I don't know, toothpaste and body lotions and creams and stuff, and they had all of that, I think, in their assortment already, so they didn't have to do any major changes, but changing the official nature of their business, and then they were able to maintain at least, I think, a fourth of their stores open, which I'm not sure if that's what saved them, but they were close to having to shut down. That was a few months down, and that's a strategy, that's a loophole that they found. Re-registering themselves as a drugstore. There's another example in Austria, close to here, where people, you were not allowed to have vacation. So you were not allowed to go to vacation, and in wintertime, especially here, a lot of people go skiing in Austria, in the Alps, in the mountains, and there were those a few people who did not let themselves distract, or who did not let the mainstream media keep them from going southwards to Austria, and there was a few hotel owners who also were very happy for each one individual that would actually come and book, preventing them from having to lock down. And it seems that there was a loophole, whereas travel was allowed almost exclusively for people who were looking work. So then, it wasn't tourists crossing the borders and renting a hotel room over the weekend or over a week, but it was people who were actively like seeking work and looking for employment in Austria, who happened to be found sometimes in large groups on the ski places, enjoying themselves.
Maybe that's the kind of work they were looking for that weekend.
Right? Yeah. Tour guides for
Well,
us.
and I do think that there's a great deal of humanity when it comes to even the like police officers and the people that are supposedly enforcing the laws and supposed rules that they have in place. A lot of those kind of situations in which the police are not necessarily on board with whatever is going on, and they don't want to create circumstances because they understand who are the real criminals and who aren't, or at least who are doing things that are really detrimental to society or to the local community versus things that are just ridiculous. And I know we see a lot of movies or videos of police kicking old people down because they won't put a mask on or something like that. But it's interesting how that video gets out all over the world, and yet there's probably like 99% of the time that nothing happens. But that's not the thing that's broadcast. And of course they want people to be a little bit afraid that might happen to them. But the reality is it's a great deal different. And if we really kind of play with that, there's just no way that a organization like the police or the military or anything can police all the people all of the time. And they can't even police 10% of the people all of the time. And so if we just keep that in mind, well, if somebody's breaking the law over here, well, then they race over there. And then somebody else, well, I see the cops going over there. Now they're over here.
Yeah, isn't that a great example for a hijacked mind? So it is the mind again being hijacked. Is the perception of what is being hijacked. Is like, and people obeying rules and doing things that are not even logical to them, because out of fear. because they think, wow, they don't have this, or they can't, not even if 10% would stand up, they couldn't do anything. They don't have that in mind. They have in mind, if I do this, then I have to pay 5,000, and if I do that, then it's like, oh, they're gonna lock me up, and that's what keeps people in check, right? Because their
Yeah,
mind is hijacked, and they have no, yeah, it's fear, and it's uncomfortable if you face the nature of the system that we also chose to live in and to live by. And luckily, and that's another great example for I think a loophole which seems to be opening, at least here, which is there's a growing community of people who are in the German-speaking world who are seeking or actively seeking what's called ecological settling or settlements. So there's like a huge server that has, I think, within a few weeks gotten more than 1,000 members, which is very interesting to look at. There's still a great number of those who are passive, as well as most people are passive, but there's people who actively are seeking to identify other people who are seeking to settle, to have ecological forms, new ways of living together, leaving those established structures and looking for something else and looking for alternative ways of living together out of the normal system, so to say. We're looking into organic farming, permaculture, designed ways of living together. And then there's this Anastasia movement from Russia, who's a big driver behind this particular movement that I'm touching upon. And it does seem that those messages and that have been out there for years, they seem to resonate with more and more people now. And that is that is certainly a beautiful thing for me to see and to witness that more people are getting it. And yeah, if from my own experience, if you would just allowing yourself uh, to even just for a moment to hold the thought or the possibility that it's actually possible to build your own home with your own hands, not for each and everyone, but for most people, that's not like a faraway thing. You can do that, and it's able to do that with natural materials that are right here and right there. It's able, there's possibilities of
Awesome.
doing that at a fraction of the cost of the homes that you supposedly have to buy right now, and where you enslave yourself for 40, 50 years at least here, to the bank in order to pay off that. And that, for me, that was like a huge wow. That is a loophole in itself, to know, even to just know of the possibility. I don't think you have to do it and it has to be done that way, but to know it is actually possible. And if you look at
What about cob house buildings?
that's what I'm
Just
talking about.
stray and mud. You
Natural
stamp on
materials that
it,
are right there in
you
place.
make whatever. Yeah, it's every country. Here, apparently, you can use coconut husks for the straw. Isn't that cool?
No, it's behind the
yeah.
idea behind is that it's possible that if you look even at the animal kingdom, like they build their own houses, their own shelter, and it does take them like a fraction of their of their lifetime, and not years and years, or a huge amount of their lifetime in order to do that, to just to get shelter going. If you look at natural indigenous societies, like how do this, what is the amount of time and effort on a daily basis that has to go towards sustaining your basic living, and looking at that, that's like a huge possible like shift of your mindset that is right there. It's like, well, something is going wrong here, because how come I'm slaving most of my life just in order to make ends meet and to get to get the basic foundational life support that sustains my living body here on this planet going. There's something wrong about that. And so there's loopholes left, right, and center, like I said, on the physical plane, on the emotional plane, on the mental plane. And the one for me that drives it home is always the spiritual one, because if we are spiritual beings at large, and if the other aspects of us are actually the least of who we are, then shouldn't we look right here, inside here, right here and right now, what is our true nature, and wouldn't we not be led to see that all this outside, this hustle and bustle and these ups and downs, are just really, the up and down waves that we still perceiving, but that is not truly our nature. And if we can settle ourselves in that being that is untouched, that cannot be shaken up, that cannot be masked, that cannot be kept at home, that cannot be locked in, then that for me is the greatest loophole in itself.
Well, and I think I think if people understand that, like, people that write rules always leave that they don't really understand, they don't really grasp that as you write more rules, you end up with more potential for loopholes. And of course, you look at any of the rules in any of the countries, there's books and books and books of laws and regulations and rules, and there's probably rules in there that contradict each other's rules. And that's the thing is that, like, for people that are savvy and understand that there are loopholes, there are always loopholes. And every time you put 2 or 3 words together, there's other ways that you can misunderstand that or switch it around and create circumstances that are advantageous. And so, I'll use the example of there's a story of a guy that's, he's working in a pizza place, and they tell him, if people order a medium pizza and you get them to upgrade to a large pizza, you get a credit for your employee of the month thing. So he looked at the situation and found out that, well, if people ordered large pizzas, he could just punch it in as a medium pizza and then push it as an upgrade. And then he won the employee of the year, or he won the employee of the month every month for the entire year, because he just figured out the little stupid system that they've got. And that's really the opportunity that we all have if we really just observe what's going on. If we just look for the loophole, we're going to find one, and they're all over the place.
Yeah, and then the rules that are being set out, the rules that are in place, who is being ruled by that? Is it your true being? That's not ruled by, that your true self, is that affected by any of those laws and regulations? No, it's not. You can only be affected by that if you identify yourself with, that which is the least of you. And that is the constant loophole that you have right here, right now. And of course, it's, that's not nice. I have to stay home. I can't do this. I can't do that. Oh, I have to, sell pizzas until the end of my days. But then you have to, your awareness, your consciousness, the consciousness of your being has to shift to something more than that. To think, like they say, like outside the box thinking. So those rules only, you run by those rules if you put yourself in the box that they set up for you. And that still is your decision. Are you jumping in that box, or are you staying outside of the box? So that is up to you, right?
So just so you guys know, I just checked our broadcasting, and we are now. We weren't broadcasting on YouTube for a while, and now we are. So I don't know if it's my recording tool or if it's, but on Facebook we were strong the whole time, so we have a recording.
Okay. Well, I would just, what I was going to say is that there's all kinds of loopholes, and to some degree, if you can't find one, look to the left or to the right. There's usually somebody that's figured it out, and if you can't do it, then talk to the person to the right or left of you. And that's probably why they got everybody in their houses, because they don't want people talking to each other, because then they'll figure out where the loopholes are, and that's probably going to be an industry that happens. I mean, if you look at Amsterdam, the whole idea of the coffee shops selling marijuana was a loophole that then became an industry that became a movement. I mean, that's what Amsterdam is kind of known for. It's that kind of that ability to be free, and the police essentially. There's rules on the book, but they just don't enforce the rules, because it's ridiculous, because they already know there's a big hole, there's a big loophole, and so it just doesn't make any sense for them to enforce the rules. Now, from my understanding, I think they're trying to close those loopholes, but the bottom line is we've had 30 or 40 years of an experience that was really just a creation of a loophole that somebody found.
But I thought smoking anything is legal in Holland.
No, it's actually illegal. It's just the police don't enforce it.
Huh. I thought all narcotics were free to use for anybody as they pleased.
Now, Portugal, that's a different story.
I'll have to check that.
So the loopholes is really, huh, it is to look for them in order to find them, right? So you have to know that they are there, and then you can look for them. And at what level are you actually looking for the loopholes that you're trying to find? Are you looking, you know, are you the shop owner who's just trying to, find a loophole for the shop and get it open and survive physically? And that's definitely there, or are you trying, um, or are you looking out to find that loophole that actually will allow you for the rest, of you being here, of your existence right here, to actually, be in peace, be in harmony, and be in a place where you can look at all this stuff that's playing out, and the ups and downs are there, and there's tears, and there's tears of joys as well, which seems to be part of life. But the ability to see that that which you truly are is not governed by their rules, by their system, that is something that is a major breakthrough.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest loophole of all, of people working together. If people work together, find the loophole, they'll probably find it. Whether it's a business owner or a family in a house, or any other situation, if you work together, your chances of succeeding go exponentially up.
Yeah, and working together, hand in hand on, whatever endeavor you have on your mind or you have going on. You mentioned that, the importance of communication. That's something that plays into that. Then also, as you pointed out, we're forced to stay at home, and we're not able to look left and right like that, and to look at our neighbor, at our family members, and exchange ourselves like we used to do, more freely than before. But isn't that an invitation also to actually look right here, to look inside of ourselves? And that, as contrary as that may sound first, but work together, doesn't that also not only mean to work together hand in hand on the field, in the physical realm, but actually to unveil who you truly are? Because if if you see that, then do you see a difference between you and the perceived other? And isn't that like the highest form of working together, to actually realize who you truly are, and that which is expressing itself through you is expressing itself through everyone around you, and then naturally you are working together already. You just have not been, able to perceive and to understand that every interaction, everything you do, you think, you live, is actually like a co-creation, is working together with each and every one, which in itself is you in the end. So to come to that realization, I think, is an opportunity, is a loophole of these times as well. And so it's a funny thing, because as much as they are oppressing and pushing down and locking us in, the loophole and the way to cut right through it's never far away. It's actually right beside us. We just have to have eyes to see, and we have to
Exactly.
want to find it.
Yeah, no matter how big or broad the wall that they try and build, there's always a way around the wall, either over it or under it or through it, or the inferior quality. There's always some way. It's just a matter of looking for it. You're going to find it, because they're not building they built the what is it, the big wall that goes across China, the Great Wall, I guess. But for the most part, they're not building walls anymore. I guess you can say the United States border is probably the most effective wall these days. But even that, or even the one in Israel.
Is it though? Yeah, there's the one.
There's still people getting around it.
Yeah. I keep on seeing those videos, like from the wall in the US, people jumping over and finding all kind of creative ways too. And you said there's the Berlin Wall, there's the wall in Israel as well. There's the one in Mexico now. There's the Chinese one, which you were able to see, which are able to see from the moon supposedly. So yeah, and if you look at those walls, how they look today, how long did they last?
Yep. There's always a way.
And it's an illusion to think that you could, how can you say, wall in? That you could surround that which we truly are with a wall. That is just
like you can't own anything.
What do you really?
Let's see, do we have any comments? Anybody watching?
No.
I actually did. I was talking to somebody the other day that was saying that they saw us on Raising Excellence, and they wanted to pass along a hello to each of you.
Nice.
Sounds
No,
good.
no comments so far.
I know there's people out there watching. I know it. Hello.
Mesmerized. Hello, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And just highlighting the opportunity of chiming in through comments or connecting to us through the website as well. And yeah, make yourself part of our virtual living room and ask questions, steer us. We're there with you, for you, and through you as well.
All right, here I got a story. So here's a perfect example of somebody finding a loophole. So this was back in the day when they first started putting parking kiosks, pay for parking kiosk in universities. They didn't actually have them connected online. They would download the information once a month. And so they would take credit cards, but they wouldn't actually charge the credit card until they downloaded the information at the end of the month. This person knew that. So they would go and they would get one of those prepaid credit cards. They would put it in the machine, and then they would run down the balance to zero. And at the end of the month, when they download the information, they would run the card. It would come up negative, and then they wouldn't be able to charge the credit card. They would ban that credit card from being used, but it didn't matter because it was one of those prepaid credit cards that you didn't need. So the kid went through the entire university experience doing that very thing, never paid a single dollar in parking fees.
Wow.
And there you go. There's a perfect
That's a dream.
example of how you find the loophole and solve a problem that otherwise other people seem to not figure out. But again, that guy probably could have made a lot of money doing that.
True.
If he was a little bit more entrepreneurial. He's standing there at the front of the thing, giving out prepaid credit cards that were dead at the end of the month.
Nice one.
So I may not be here next week, so you people might have to hang out with the boys, or I will be somewhere in the field doing a cell phone rendition of myself and talking about things. So we'll see which one transpires, but I'm already looking forward to next week's topic.
Maybe we'll use this opportunity to find a guest. Maybe we bring in a guest host.
We shall
Yeah,
reveal
do
on
that.
Monday the teaser show, the topic for next week as always. That
Yeah,
being
do
said, thank you very much for everyone staying with us. We hope you could get some value out of today's topic, and we hope to provide more next week. And yeah, thank you very much. Muito obrigado. Gracias. And talk to you again very soon.
Buenas noches, todos.
Guten
So
Abend.
long.
Or morning, whatever it is.